began a newspaper career as a reporter for the Gloucester, Massachusetts sports editor, in Salina, Ohio, and Sunday magazine editor in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where he has now lived for 50 years. In 1973, he became the chief copywriter for the largest advertising agency in southeastern Massachusetts. In his spare time, he also became one of the country's leading sports historians. He has 5 books published. They are Who's Who in American Sports, the New Encyclopedia of Sports, The Pro Football Fan's Companion, A Who's Who of Sports Champions, and the Encyclopedia of North American Sports History. 4 of those 5 books were chosen by the American Library Association as being among the most outstanding reference books of the year. In 2008, the Pro Football Researchers Association, did you know there was such a thing, gave him, or Ralph Hickok, the Ralph E. Hay Award for Lifetime Achievement to Professional Football Research and Bibliography. So today, Ralph is going to tell us a little bit about a book that hasn't been published yet. Ralph?
Thank you, Paul. Is this on target?
It is.
Okay, I'm going to start with a question. How many people have ever heard of John Victor McNally Jr.? Anybody? Oh, some people. Let me rephrase the question. How many people have heard of Johnny Blood? Okay, that's better. Those of you who know Johnny Blood probably know that John Victor McNally Jr. and Johnny Blood were one and the same person. John McNally played in the NFL for 14 seasons under the name of Johnny Blood. He spent 7 of those seasons with the Packers, and he played for the Packers' first 4 championship teams, 1929, 1930, 1931, 1936. He was a charter member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he was named to the All-Decade NFL team of the 1930s. But quite beyond being a great football player, he was known as being something of a character off the field. There are a lot of Johnny Blood stories. I'll just share one with you. After the 1932 season, the Packers played a series of exhibition games on the West Coast and in Hawaii. When they got to Los Angeles for an exhibition game there, as usual, he was broke. He wanted to get to Santa Catalina Island because he'd spent a couple of summers there and he knew a girl there. So he asked Curly Lambeau for an advance on his salary. This was in the hotel lobby, and Curly said absolutely not, went up to his room. So Johnny Blood called him on the house phone and again asked for an advance on his salary, and Curly Lambeau said no. A little later, after thinking about it, Johnny Blood went up to his room, knocked on his door, and again asked for some money. And again he was turned down, and Lambeau said, "Don't call me and don't knock on my door anymore. For once I'm going to know exactly where you are. You're going to have to stay in this hotel because you don't have any money." So Johnny thought about it for a few more minutes, and he thought to himself, well, he said I can't call him, I can't knock on his door. He didn't say anything about his window. Now it happened that Lambeau was on the 8th floor of the hotel. Johnny Blood charmed a chambermaid into letting him into a room across a courtyard from Lambeau's room. It was about 12 feet across. It was raining. John opened the window, climbed out onto the window ledge. He pondered the 12-foot distance to Lambeau's window ledge. And just about then, one of his teammates, Mike Michalski, happened to glance out his window. He saw him. He opened his window. He said, "Is that you up there, Johnny Blood?" And John called down, "Yes, it's me." And Michalski said, "What are you doing?" And Johnny Blood said, "Well, the coach wants me to discuss strategy for the game, so I'm going to visit his room." And he leaped across the courtyard onto the window ledge. Fortunately, Lambeau's window was open. He climbed in through the window. Lambeau was taking a nap, and of course he woke up. He was rather startled to see the apparition of Johnny Blood beside his bed, and Lambeau said, pointed at his trousers, which were hanging over a chair, said, "My wallet's in the rear hip pocket. Take all the money you want and go wherever you want. Just don't ever do anything like that to me again." As I said, that's just one of many Johnny Blood stories. And I had heard a lot of the stories. As I grew up, I met Johnny Blood a couple of times. In 1949, when he was here when the Packers were trying to raise money. And in 1954, when he was campaigning for Warren Knowles, who was running for lieutenant governor. And starting, I guess when I was about 12 years old, I felt somebody ought to write a book about this guy. So my first book was published in 1971. I felt that gave me the credentials to get in touch with him. So I believe it was February 1972, I got in touch with Lee Remmel. Lee gave me John McNally's address in Minneapolis, so I wrote him a letter. I outlined my background and said I thought I'd like to write a book about him. I'd like to talk to him. I mailed that letter on Tuesday. Now, at the time, I was the Sunday magazine editor for the Standard Times in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Mailed the letter on Tuesday. Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call. Voice said, "This is John McNally. You know me as Johnny Blood." So naturally, I was excited, very happy to get a response so soon. And I was even more excited when it said, "I'm parked in front of the newspaper building. How do I get to your house from here?" So I gave him directions, and a few minutes later, he was at the house, and we were talking about doing the book. He visited a number of times that year. In 1973, he and I took a trip along what I think of as the Johnny Blood Trail through parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, various places played. And then in August 1973, we went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame together. It was the 10th anniversary celebration. So I could interview some people who had played with and against him. Among the people I interviewed were George Alice, Red Grange, Ernie Nevers, several other people. But one person I really wanted to interview was Art Rooney, who was then the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, because John had been a player coach in Pittsburgh for the last 3 years of his career. And the word we got was that Art Rooney was going to fly in shortly before the Hall of Fame game on Saturday afternoon. Then he'd be at a reception for Hall of Fame members after the game, and then he'd be flying out again. So I saw no way that there'd be time to interview him. So Johnny Blood said, "Well, you can interview him at the reception for Hall of Fame members." And I said, "John, I can't get in there. That's Hall of Fame members only." And he said, "Well, don't worry about it." So we went to the game. We went to the Hall of Fame where the reception was going to be held. We went to the room, and there was a big sign outside the door that said, "Hall of Fame members, green badge only." So John and I started to walk in. There was a security guy standing there, and he put a hand on my shoulder. He said, "I'm sorry, you can't go in there. You're wearing a yellow badge, which is media." He said, "Green badges only." So Johnny Blood said, "You won't let my son come in with me?" the guard said, well, he looked at his name tag, which said John McNally. He said, Mr. McNally, I can't, it's green badges only. He's wearing a yellow badge. And John said, well, I'm a charter member. I was inducted here in 1963. If I don't show up at this reception, are you going to explain to George Hallett and Red Grange and Art Rooney and so forth? I'm not here because you wouldn't let my son in. So the guard pondered that for a moment, and then he said, well, all right, you can go in. So we went in, we found Art Rooney, I interviewed him. Mission accomplished. And just about the time the reception was ending, a back door opened, and the National Football League Commissioner Pete Rozelle stepped into the room, thanked everybody for being here, and at this point Johnny Blood nudged me and he said, you and Pete Rozelle are the only people here who don't have green badges. So I could go on forever about Johnny Blood, believe me, I don't have the time to do that, but if any of you do have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, and otherwise we'll just let the festivities continue. Any questions at all?
What's your favorite Vince Lombardi story?
Vince Lombardi story. Well, that's a tough one. I don't think there are many funny stories about Lombardi. I think one that I've heard or read many times was, I think it was Willie Davis who said he treated us all the same, like dogs. Do people here know about the Lambeau-Lombardi link? Speaking of that, the degrees of separation, I think it's kind of interesting. When Johnny Blood briefly went to Notre Dame, they wouldn't let him play football because he was a halfback. They wanted him to play tackle because he was good size for the time. He was like 6'1", 190 pounds. And so when he showed up at the tryout, one of the coaches said, you'll try out as a tackle. And so Johnny Blood said, well, tackles seek contact, halfbacks avoid contact. I prefer to avoid contact. So he never got to try out. But while he was there, this was, I think, in 1923, the Notre Dame was putting together a great backfield, became known as the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame. One of those four horsemen was Sleepy Jim Crowley, who was an East High graduate. And when Jim Crowley played at East High, Curly Lambeau coached East High as well as the Packers that year. Later on, Sleepy Jim Crowley became the head coach at Fordham, and one of his players there was a guard named Vincent T. Lombardi. So there's just 1 degree of separation between Lambeau and Lombardi. Anybody else? Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Pharrell.